Chapter 12. Now we're talking, the Indian now is going to be the Indian of the Tzimtzum and Rishima. Even though in general people know about this, but that the main thing in understanding in terms of the Yichud is to understand the Indian of the Tzimtzum and Rishima. And not to get fooled by the Holy Hishtalshelut. Moshe Neymar Atahu Avayla Vadecha Atachulu V'zeu Amelach Amreim Levado Prinat Malchus the Eins of Shalifnat Tzimtzum Shemiznase Gami Meisalam Da'ak Shenikra Yemei Kedem, which is called Yemei Kedem. And by the way, like I said before, usually where you say Yemei Eilam is Atzilus, and Yemei Kedem is the midos of Atik and Arich. But here he's saying a different thing. וזהו השמיים, בחינת הסבב הכלל יש אחר צמצום, ושמי השמיים שלפני הצמצום לא יכלכלוך. וגם בבחינת כלי לכלי, יכלכלוך means a keli to a keli. כמו גליף ובתהירי לה, Fulu, that even the glif glifu in the Tehuri law is not even a keli for the actual Eibishter, Daila Mavid. וכמו שנאמר מילי בשמיים, שהוא גם בחינת סבב הכלל שלפני הצמצום, שנקרא שמי השמיים. So in other words, he's saying here Shemayim is what in the previous explanation he called Shmei HaShemayim. ואם חלוך הפצי בארץ בחינת קו אחוז בחינת ממלא הכלל יכולו. So that's the preface to this chapter, and now he's going to explain the actual inyan. והנה יש כמה איפנים במשולים שיינים להשכיל ביר עניין הצמצום הנקרא מקום פנוי כידוע למעיין. וכללוסו אלא בסגנון אחד, but in general it's one inyan. והוא, כדי שיוכל להיות אין זה בבחינת השפעה בצמצום בבחינת קו, הוא צריך לצמצם עצמוס אירו שישור בהלם בעצמוס החולו. ולא יאיר כולו, רק אפץ קצר בלבד. כדי שאחר כך המשך הער בדילוג הערך. That's the Indian of the Tzimtzum and Rishima. And now he's going to give Mashallah. הרי זה כמו של אור שכל עומק ורחה שבעצמוס משפיע, שכדי שיומשך ממנו למקבל הבלתי ערך עליו, הוא צריך המשפיע להלם בעצמו כל עמק הסגוסי. ולא יישאר רק פינת רשם כנקודה אחת מכל העמק והרחב, ולא שנסתלק ונתעלם לגמרי. It's not that it actually disappeared, because it's talking about this whole thing is happening in the Mashpia himself. It's like a Mishnah in relationship to the Talmud. That when he says the Mishnah, he knows the whole Gemara on it. When he's saying the Mishnah in a short way. The minute somebody will ask him, he'll be able to tell you the whole big pilpul on it. Because he is teaching little children Mishnayos, so even inside of himself, he is hiding it for the time being. Like it explains in another place at length. And what is left, like an akuda, which is the short way, ends at Tzimtzum Gomer V'Amiti. It's not really an actual, real, total. First of all, it's not a total Tzimtzum, and secondly, it's not even a real Tzimtzum. Like somebody who actually makes a real Tzimtzum and totally hides it. That over there, it's missing by the Makabel totally. And here, it's not only that it's not that, it's mamish the opposite from that. That the whole reason it's done in the first place is dafka in order to give it over to the Makabel. It's dafka for that. The whole reason for it is dafka in order to give it over to the Makabel. So, not only it's not an actual Tzimtzum Kipshutoi, it's really the opposite from a Tzimtzum Gomer. That really, it's a Tzimtzum means that it's going away. And really, this Tzimtzum is dafka the opposite. It's in order to give it. It's not really in order to stop it. And the whole thing is like basically what he's saying. This is like this marshal means like a teacher. That a teacher, when he's teaching little kids, so he teaches them like mathematics. He has to metzamtzem the whole thing. Not only that, he has to megashim it. Like he has to make it an inyan of like one fishy plus one fishy. Or one apple, like he says. If you have an apple and then you have another apple, and then if you have 4 apples and you eat an apple, in other words, you have to totally megashim the inyan in order to have them understand it. And in the beginning, he can just tell them tiny little things. But the whole reason that he's telling them tiny little things is not really to withhold the information from them, just the opposite. He really wants to give them the whole information over, and that way when they finish first grade, then they'll be able to get to second grade, all the way up to where they'll do like postgraduate work, and finally they'll become a Rebbe just like him. And the final inyan of this whole thing with a teacher, the goal is not just that they'll know as much as him. That's not the goal. The goal is that they'll be a Rebbe just like him. In other words, the actual Atzmus is going to be given over. That when they finish, it's not just they'll be a guy who knows a bunch of knowledge, but he'll actually be mamish, have the etzem of a Rebbe himself. שנכסל מקבל לגמרי, אלא העניין הוא שכל בדרך קודש זה כל האריכוס. לא יחסר דבר וחצי דבר. So this is really not even like when we say in the marshal Goyish school, you have to take dafka the marshal in the Jewish school, because in the Mishnah, it's not just a kitzur that you leave some things out. But really, in the Mishnah, there's nothing missing at all. The whole Talmud is included in there. K'mo shekolol bedin hakotzer shebamishnah kol harichus apilpul shebegemara. Not only that, the real thing, it's not only that he mamish, that that he knows the whole pilpul, that's why it's in there. Just the opposite. The pilpul of the Gemara came out of the Mishnah because, you know the whole story, that the Rebbe saw that, the Romans were making problems, and the yeshivas were getting messed up. So really, the thing is like most people think that first was the Gemara and then there was the Talmud. But really, first there was the Mishnah and then there was the Gemara. But really, there was really a Gemara before the Mishnah. They had the whole Torah Shal Bal Peh they had before the Mishnah, and he took it and put it in a very short way that could be shina, that you could go over in a very fast way. And it's said in such a way that even later on, when they forgot certain things, they can reconstitute it out of the Mishnah. So you see that the whole previous Gemara was really included in the Mishnah, and then you can reconstitute and bring out the whole pilpul of the Gemara, because the whole pilpul of the Gemara is included in the kitzur of the Mishnah. And somebody who really knows the whole Gemara, like a big real Talmud Chacham like they used to have in the olden days, even when he says a Mishnah, he knows like if Rashi would be saying a Mishnah. He would know the whole thing. The lotion is talik legamre. It's not that it really went away, kashichacha, like he forgot it. Like if you forget it, it went away. Like if somebody has amnesia or something like that, no? Holo. But really, he knows the whole thing right now, even when he's saying in the short way. It also comes in the same way. Because the soul cannot really come into the body, just the soul. And even like a little piece of the soul, like one power of the soul, like what we were talking about before, that, with Abbott and Costello and the Wolfman.
Right.
Even like the Koyach HaDibur or the Koyach HaTnuah, if the whole Koyach HaTnuah is trying to come in, it won't be able to, and they won't be able to be at Tnuah. So certainly the whole soul cannot go into the body first of all, it's too infinite for it, and secondly, because She'en Erech V'Neim, it's a totally different inyan. Has nothing to do with the body. It's a whole different inyan. But nonetheless, the soul is mispoel. It gets excited from what happens to the body. Like if something happens, whether bad or good, the soul is mispoiled from it. Im ken gam or hakshamis hachayus, the light of the hakshamis hachayus, which is the actual physical life, titchaber v'nikshar el or atzmus aruchni. So it's connected. It's not the same like the Mishnah is completely connected to Gemara. The same thing that the life of the physical is completely connected to the spiritual, and there's two reasons how you see this. One thing that you see is from the fact that the actual happiness is really in the soul. The actual happiness or sadness is really in the soul, not in the body. And the second thing is that dead dogs don't bark. If the soul isn't there, there won't be the chayas a basar.
Right.
Immediately when the soul leaves, there won't be no chayas basar at all. It means so that they're connected, and the spiritual life is makif on the physical life. Katzmicha Gashmias, like a Tzmicha Gashmias, Sheniksha Bekoyach HaTzameach HaRuchni, that is connected to the Koyach HaTzameach HaRuchni, and you see if you'll take the plant out of the ground, it'll stop growing. Ever Haguf, and another proof of this is that if somebody accidentally loses a limb, like an arm or a leg or something like that, Chas v'Shalom, Lo yechsar be'er b'chayus ruchnius shel ever zeh. The spirituality of it will not be missing anything. Oraya misuma shalom meili cholem. That somebody who Chas v'Shalom gets blind, it doesn't mean that from now on all his children will be like that, but rather they are born whole, and the same thing with anybody who loses any other limb. So, like if somebody loses a finger, Chas v'Shalom, that doesn't mean that from now on all the rest of his generations will be with missing that finger. Just the opposite. They will actually have a finger. Then another thing is, it's a known thing that people who lose a piece of their body, they still feel it there. There's a ghost, you know.
That's called the phantom limb.
A phantom limb, that's it. Right. They still feel it there, and as a matter of fact, one would sometimes even have a problem because it itches, and you can't itch it.
Right.
Yadua. Ein ze rak sharuchnius hu be'elam. V'yeshna b'mitzius ha'chayfiv al-chayz ha'gashmi shebaguf. V'nikra tzelem ish. And that's called a phantom person. It's not really a phantom person, it's the tzelem. That's the... I don't know how you say tzelem in English, the picture or whatever. I mean, it's not really...
Image.
It's not just the image, it's more than an image.
Like the form.
But Salmeinu could Musain, yeah, but it's not really. In Hebrew, it means a little bit more than that. It's the actual tzelem means the whole actual actual form of the person is there.
Right.
And this tzelem is included in, like by a tree also, and by a person, it's already included in the first cell.
Right.
In other words, when a person is conceived, the minute that he's conceived, and there's only one or two cells, if you would know how to look at it, you'd be able to see exactly how he's going to look when he grows up.
Right. The whole codification is already there.
Yeah, you'd be able to see if it's a frog or a person, or a dog or a horse. And you'd be able to see mamish what color his eyes are, and how smart he's going to be, like not according to the education, but the potential. What?
Even to the tiniest detail.
Even to the tiniest detail, right. You could actually, you could even, like, if you knew how, you'd be able to get his fingerprint.
Right, like I was just listening, they had a whole big article on the news today.
Yeah.
That they made a study of this family of about 100 individuals.
Yeah.
That they have a very strong propensity for heart attacks in that family.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, no.
Okay, so they, out of like 10 siblings, 9 of them have heart trouble.
Yeah.
And then all their offspring, too.
Right.
So they did the whole genome, you know. They studied their genetic codes.
Yeah, right.
They found one little tiny protein that's missing from their genetic code.
Yeah. And that's why.
And that's why they have these heart attacks, whereas the one brother that doesn't have this missing protein, he doesn't have the heart attacks. And then all the offspring that have this protein missing, they either have already heart troubles or they're going to have heart troubles. And the other ones don't.
And you could really see this when there was one
from
cell.
One tiny protein out of a huge, the whole genome,
Yeah, but you'd be able to see it with the first cell.
Right, exactly. It's encoded in all.
By the first cell, it's already there.
Right, exactly.
And in other words, the minute that the conception, that the male and female parts join together,
it's already
not only
there.
that, it really was already there even before that, only in two pieces.
Right.
You know, so, and not only that, even before those two pieces was there, it was already included in the genetic makeup of his father and his mother. Except you don't know which pieces he would get from each one of them.
Right.
So, the spirituality, the form, the telem, the form is already there before that.
Right.
The kol zeh mevor b'yichud makom acher. V'ken koyach hatnuah ruchnius sheba b'tnuas hageshem mitzamtzemes b'atzmusa. Like what we said about if all of a sudden a dinosaur, if the guy's walking down the street and all of a sudden a dinosaur comes up, you know.
Right.
If there's no symptom of the Tnuah Aruchnius, when it comes into the Tnuas HaGeshem, there won't be a Tnuas HaGeshem. It'll freeze.
Right.
It'll freeze up and you won't be able to make any Tnuah at all.
Right.
And the same thing, like when a guy is very excited, you know, like he's very excited and, you know, like he just saw the Twin Towers fall or something like that, you know.
Right.
And, the cop is telling him, calm down for a minute, and you'll be able to tell him, you know. In other words, what's he trying to do? He's trying to make a tzimtzum in order that he should be able to get the speech out of the Kayach HaDibur.
Right.
And you can, this is exactly the same marshal you can say in many different ways. And all kinds of other things. Which these first things, it's not really just nothing is left over, because in the Mishnah, even though it's a kitzur, but it's the same Indian as the Gemara.
Right.
It's just as it's called a amur tamachzik, it's amurbit. But it's not that it's totally gone. That's first of all. Secondly, it's the same Indian.
Right.
By the way, I was reading in what is it? I think it was Ranat. No, it was Ranat. No, Tafresh Ayin. I can't remember. Not Ayin base. I think it was Ayin. I have to look at the book again. And he says there's basically 4 inyanim here. He says one of them is the Mishnah and the Gemara. The next one he says the Reishim Ha'uman.
Right.
In other words, over here he says it's 4 mashalim, but really you see more than 4 mashalim. But this whole thing here, like the Chaya Ruchnim and the Chaya Aguf, it's also like a small thing that holds a big thing. That even though it's like the Tnuah is like a different Indian, but it's still the Tnuah that was included in the original Tnuah. It's not like a total removal. Something is left over. Then the next one is the blueprint.
Right.
And then the next one is the ice, you know, an acrostic or something like that. And then the last one is a remez.
Right.
And then he says, but the Zrika, that's actually the Indian of the Rishimu, that actually is a separate thing.
Right.
So he says those 4 things is like the 4 worlds Abiyah, that in Atilus is like a kitzur. Atilus is still the same Indian as the Atmos, really, even though it's a big kitzur of it.
Right.
Then he says Bria is like the Reishim, and Yetzira is like, because in Yetzira, even though it's not really like a binyan, but nonetheless you have everything from the exact things that's in the binyan like a map. It's like a map of a big thing. It's exactly the same thing.
Right.
It's not that it's really gone. The Torah is still there.
Right.
And then in the Tiyunim, like a Rosh Hashanah, it's already mamish gone, but it's still something is left over, the first letter, which is not really the thing. The actual thing is gone, but still something of it is left, and the remez is a totally different Indian, and that's like a siyah.
Right.
So, it's an interesting thing, when you read Rebbe Rashab, he fills in stuff from here,
Right.
But, you have to know over here, first of all, before you read over there. Not only that, over here we don't necessarily have to know exactly how it applies in Abiyah, but he says that's why. What you see over here is there's different mashalim. One gives you the thing that, like in the Mishnah and the Gemara, you see how the whole thing is mamish there, and nothing at all is missing.
Right.
Nothing at all. It's mamish. The whole Gemara is right there in the Mishnah.
Right.
Where are we? V'avin p'china Rishimu she'inyana meire p'china Histalkus behelam v'lo nishmar kol rak reishim. Not a kitzur. Move on yetzer minyan meshalim machim kol hareishim she'isa ha'uman she'yuchal asat abinyan b'kitzur. The kitzur kav zeh she'bereishim she'kol kol harichas ha'maisa b'kitzur reishim zeh. He's talking about a blueprint. But in this little blueprint, there's a whole Indian of exactly how to build a building. Oh, Kamai, Misha, Aise.
So why is that not as good as the teacher and the student?
Well, because
it's
a different Indian. The Mishnah is the same Indian. There's a Chochmah and there's a Chochmah. The blueprint is not a building. It's only a shape of a building.
Right.
So,
not even
in the
really
Mishnah, it's first of all, it's mamish. The whole thing is there. That's why it's such a good mashal that you see that not even a half a thing is missing, and you can reconstitute the whole Gemara out of the Mishnah. Over here also you can reconstitute the whole thing, but it's not exactly the same because it's a different Indian. This is a building and this is a drawing.
So is it correct to assume or to say that the marshal of the Mishnah is going on the Tzimtzum to show how in the Tzimtzum is really included the whole thing, and this marshal of the house and the blueprint and all the other marshalim are on the Rishimu?
No, later on he says on the Rishimu. Actually, there's Rikas on the Rishimu itself.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that these. Well, over here he says.
Yeah, that's the Rishim, right.
Over there he's talking about a marshal on the Tzimtzum.
It's also like a Rishimu. There's a Tzimtzum. He's Mitzamtzum and leaves over a Rishim. It's a Rishimu.
Right.
And it's called Rishima, like the Rishima
right.
The Rebbe.
Right.
A Rishima is when a guy in school sits in a lecture and takes notes.
Right. So included in his little notes is the entire lecture.
Yeah, and in his little tiny notes, there's a whole lecture there.
Right, when he looks at it, he'll see the whole lecture.
Where's the whole lecture? I don't see the whole lecture, but because he wrote it for himself in a short way that he can understand it. He'll remember.
And when he looks at it, he'll remember the whole lecture.
He'll remember the whole lecture. And that's like the next Indian here. And that's like a Zichrein, a Nikra Eis. Meaning not notes, but even less than notes.
Right.
Just like a ois, like a sign. She'ein ha'ois inyan shayach le'etzem ha'inyan. Like when he ties a string around his finger or something like that. Although that's really an inyan of a remez. The ois is like tiyunim, is like,
Like Rashi Tevos.
Rashi Tevos is one thing. Another thing is, the parshas that you learn that you read on Pesach.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? Like the first letter also in, also like it says, what's his name? Made Tziyunim in it, the Tzachadash B'Achav.
Right.
That's like Rosh Hashanah. But it's not just Rosh Hashanah. It's made into like a thing. Also, there's like every good boy, what is it? You know that thing, every good boy?
What is it?
I don't remember what is it. Is the colors of the rainbow or something like that? You make up a little nonsense verb, a nonsense verse. There's various things to make tziyunim to remember it by.
Right. Every good boy line. Sometimes it's classic, every good boy line.
וזהו, בחינת הלם יצא מקיצור ההלכה, ששיינה וכולל בו הכל. And over there, why? שעל כל פנים שייך עניין הקיצור האריכות. In other words, when he says that, you know, if you find a money, so there's a whole pilpul and this, but nonetheless, the Inyan is if you find money, that's the actual Inyan. In the Mishnah, that's mamish the Inyan that you're talking about. Whereas in the Ois, it's not the Inyan. It's just l'zikun ba'alma, just in order to remember.
Right.
V'yesh oid eif mishimu zu shuhu moire Inyan atzimtzum v'helem harbe yeser, and this already shows that this is the actual Inyan of the Rishimu.
I need to put in a new tape. Hold
Yeah.
on.
I don't know what it's an acrostic for.
But it's I think it's green, I don't know, whatever, but whatever it is, but it's like that's the Inyan like that. I mean, you see that if you don't know what it's the Inyan for, you can't figure it out.
Right.
It's not like the Mishnah. The Mishnah, right. Even if you can't figure out the whole pilpul of the Gemara, but you know they're talking about a guy that hit another guy, or a donkey that stepped on something.
Right.
You know the exact Inyan. You can't figure out the whole halacha, or not only that, even from the short there is a halacha. You just don't know how they derived it.
Right.
But you know the whole thing. It says a Ferush exactly. Well, what are they talking about? They're talking about a donkey. You know what they're talking about. Over here, we don't know what they're talking about. Every good boy. It's not talking about good boys, really. So, Azoyrek Evan, Shekoyach HaMoilich Eisen Nivdal Mina Etzem. Like, for instance, you can see a ball rolling down the street, and you know somebody kicked it. But
right.
you can't even see the person anymore.
Right.
The im calls there, but nonetheless, kol koyach hatnuah malubash ro behelam. Like, for instance, if this stone comes through the window, you can go and sue the person.
Right.
Why? Because it's his power of tnuah is malubash in the heaven, and you can blame him for it. That means that actually not just the koyach hatnuah, but the actual intention of the atmos is malubash in the heaven.
Right.
You say, what do you want from me? The stone broke the window. He said, no, you broke the window. I said, what do you mean I broke the window? I wasn't even there. I was far away from your window. I never went anywhere close to your window. I said, it doesn't matter. You broke the window. Or same, like that song, I shot the sheriff.
Right.
What do you mean I shot? I didn't shoot the sheriff. The bullet got the sheriff.
Right.
But you say that you broke the window.
Right.
Yourself. So it means not just the koyach hatnuah, it means that the actual etzem is malubash in it. Sheminiya ach shehu berichuk nivdal b'yeser mikoycha atmi shebiyadai. מה שאין כן כך התנועה עצמה שמניע בעצמה בגשם שמלובש בגילה בגשם בייסר. When he's actually moving something in his hand that he's holding on to, then it's actually connected to it. And in other places, this muscle is given in various places in Chassidus on Malchus and Malchus of Malchus. That Malchus is like when he's actually holding the thing in his hand, and Malchus of Malchus is when he throws it away. Kanal, v'yesh pinas helem yeser gam izeh, there's an even bigger helem, shedoim el'inyan aroshim lezichron levad. Like a roshim, just for a remembrance, meaning not like an acrostic, that an acrostic has something from the, Rosh Tevos is still that's the letters. You know that it's telling you words that begin with those letters. But this is like a string around your finger, for instance. That is just a remez. It's not. There's nothing. The string doesn't tell you. Oh, it must be something to do with strings.
Right.
It's not. It doesn't have to do with strings. Has nothing at all to do with a string at all. And this is that a very heavy seichel can be enclosed shenivdal tnua gashmis ma'aseichel aruchni v'im kol zeh maybe na'aseichel miteichel, like when the Rebbe used to make with his hands.
Right.
Achizuk, you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Like during a Farbrengen, the Rebbe would go like this, and everybody would freak out. What are you freaking out for? You just say, oh, don't you see what the Rebbe is telling us? He said, it's not telling you nothing. He's moving his hand. He says, oh, be strong, You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
The thing that the Rebbe used to do.
Right, of course.
So that's a tnuah with a hand that tells you a seichel, or the V sign, which the V sign is not really like that. The V sign is actually a letter.
Right.
It's, the
V for victory.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, It became, by the hippies, it became peace. It doesn't mean
actually
peace.
It's a war sign.
It means exactly the opposite of peace. It means winning the war.
Right.
It means netzach, to win, V for victory, and that's really not. It's not a remez. It's really what it said before. It's Tzion. It's a Rosh Tevis.
Right.
And various things is like, when people make, like you blink your eye to tell the guy something, and all kinds of movements, that the movement has nothing to do with the concept, and yet he understands the concept from it.
Right.
And even more than that is the power of the light of the seichel, which is enclosed in the movement of the finger when it writes it. But when it writes it, it's writing down the seichel, and yet it's just a tnuah.
Right.
And really, there's another one that's even like farther away. It's like a combination of the two of them. Is when you write the letter. When you write the letter, it's actually connected. That's Malchus. When you're writing the thing, when your hand is actually moving and writing. But then you can take it like a stone and throw it over 200 years.
Right.
Which is what we have here in front of us.
Right.
The Rebbe took this, he wrote this down, and then he took it and he threw it not only through space, but through time.
Right.
And it came to us. And in these Rishimas, which these letters, actually, the letters themselves have nothing in them. It's really just pieces of ink on a paper.
Right.
which were copied over from another piece of ink on a paper, which were copied over from something else that a person copied from the Ktav Yad and stuff like that.
Right.
And then it was photographed. You know? And it's like a Rishimu, and yet the whole Seichel is enclosed in it.
Right.
And all of these things is really telling you only one thing, Hanal, Shebchinas ha'atzmus nishar behelem v'kolol bareishim unukuda zu chulu. Not just the intellect of it, but the etzem, the actual etzem, the selfness, and that's why you say, you broke the window. And in the teacher, now we go back to the teacher is making the tzimtzum. It's not just to give over like a little part. First of all, it's certainly not to hide. And it's not just to give over that little part that he's giving over. Just the opposite. It's not even to give over his intellect. It's really to give over the etzem that he wants the Talmud to grow up to also be a Rebbe. Wait, hold on for a minute. I have to take a call. Hold on. And this is the real Inyan, and the Signan Echad is that the Tzimtzum, first it's not a Tzimtzum, and secondly it's not in order to be Mitzamtzim, just the opposite.
Right.
So first of all, in terms of the mashpia, it's for sure not a tzimtzum. Like by the teacher, when the teacher knows it says the Mishnah, he knows the whole Talmud. But really, even by the Makabel, it's not a tzimtzum. But by the Makabel, the whole reason for the tzimtzum is dafka in order to give over the whole atmos to him. And the nimshal, what's the nimshal? The nimshal in this basically means that the Eibishter is going to give us that the student is going to be a Rebbe.
Right.
So it means that he's going to give it all over to us, to the Jew.
Right.
That he's going to grow us up to be just like him.
Right.
And that's the promise over here, basically, in the Tzimtzum, which is a very big promise.
Right.
You know, so that's basically where we're going to stop, so you can turn off the tape now.
Why does he use all these mashalim, each one progressively lesser than the one before it?
Well, why? Because first he wants to, like one of the things is like what I told you, that it represents the Tzimtzum in the different worlds, but really also in the worlds. Why are the worlds Mitzumtzum in that way? Each one less than the world before. And why the Mashalim is each one less than the world before? Less than the Marshal before. As far as the Mashalim, which really, by the way, like we were talking about the other day, like what it says in Pasach Eliyahu, that the Inyan of the world is the Inyan of Mashalim, really, in order to learn about the Eibishter.
Right.
And really, the Hishtalshelut, that's what we're learning. We're learning the Hishtalshelut means how the world is constructed. That's the Mashal, all the way down to us. But the thing is, if you look at these mashalim, there's various inyanim that he wants to give you over. The first mashal has each mashal. What is it? They say lo reizeh kareizeh.
Right.
That each one has what the other one doesn't have. The first mashal, what does the first mashal has? The first mashal of the Mishnah.
In other words, what these mashalim are is each one gives a different aspect of the Rishimu that the other one doesn't.
That the other one doesn't, yeah. And when you take them all together,
it gives you a fuller picture of what it actually is.
You can't. You shouldn't take any mashal by itself. In the nimshal, it's really the whole thing.
Right.
So, like for instance, by the Mishnah and the Gemara, what it gives you is that the whole thing is there.
Right.
The lo chassid dover, the chassid dover.
Right.
Not even a half a thing is missing. There's nothing is missing. And that's very clear in the first mashal. But what's the problem with the first mashal? The problem in the first mashal is that it's not really a total tzimtzum.
Right.
That even though nothing is missing, it's not actually a tzimtzum, it's a kitzur.
Right.
It's not a tzimtzum, really. It's just a kitzur. It's just like mu'at amach is a small thing that holds a big thing.
Right.
But it's not a nothing. It's not, tzimtzum means it was totally gone, and it's only left a reshimu. Not a short, it's just like a reshimu ba'alma, like an impression.
Right.
Means the original thing is gone. And a thing of a reshimu, an impression, is like, for instance, in the detective movies. Now, this is not in the book. I made this one up.
Right.
In the detective books, when they come in and they see a notepad, and the page that the guy wrote the telephone number or the address is gone, but under it there's an impression of it.
Right.
And in the impression is actually the telephone number.
Right.
So that in the impression you can see the actual thing.
Right.
The whole thing is there. And this is basically, in terms of the Rishimu, means like, a Rishimu means also like that. Like a choisam amishapech.
Right.
Is a Rishimu. That, you stick the thing into the wax, then you take it out. Now the seal is gone.
Right.
And is left an empty space.
Right.
But in the empty space itself, there's the exact shape of the seal. Except for what? It's backwards.
Right.
It's backwards. It's a la'umatzeh.
It's inverted.
It's a la'umatzeh.
Right.
Zeh la'umatzeh.
Right.
So, in other words, actually, in the Rishimu is actually mamish the Yetzirah is the Rishimu. The bad is the Rishimu. The la'umatzeh is the Rishimu.
Right.
That's what was left in the hollow backwards. In other words, what does it mean backwards? Backwards means that where in the original it's in the Rishimu it's out. And when in the original it's out, in the Rishimu it's in.
Right.
Everything is backwards. Like, when you take...
And it's reversed, too.
It's reversed. So that... like how they make a face, they take a thing, they put it on the guy's face, plaster, and then they take it off, or a mold,
Right.
And then when you take it off, so there's a face, but it's exactly the opposite. Where it went out, it goes in, and where it goes in, it goes out.
Right.
It's exactly the opposite. So what do? And then you put another thing into that. You take a mold of a mold, and then it comes out straight.
Right.
So that's how it is. By going away from evil, so you're going towards the good.
Right.
In other words, by reversing the Lumadzu,
Right.
you're going towards the Eibishter.
Right.
Mamish the same. Because it's Mamish Zeh, Lumat Zeh. That's the Rishimu. It's the exact opposite. That's you make a stamp and you take out, now it's left the exact opposite. Means where it's good is bad and where it's bad is good.
Right.
In other words, what in the original said it's good, in the Lumat Zeh it says it's bad.
Right.
Like in the Lumat Zeh it says, oh, I don't want to get married.
Right.
And I want to just hang out. Where in the original, it's the exact opposite. You know?
Right.
Mamish the opposite. And that's Mamish the Rishimu, which is the opposite of it. And there's an empty space left, and in that empty space there's an exact Rishimu which is completely backwards from the original. When he leaves, when you leave a thing, when you're filling up the thing, like in the face cast, when he goes out of it and he leaves an empty space, that empty space is in the exact shape of his face, except backwards.
Right.
Except it's not really backwards. The empty space is the exact shape of his face.
Right.
It's the borders that are backwards.
Right.
The space is still the original exact, in the seal, the space is the same shape.
Right.
It's the keli that's backwards.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's basically also, and what a Rishimu means, also an impression. That's what an impression is, of a seal. But over here, in terms of these mashalim, what he gives, the first mashal has the thing that it's all there. The second mashal gives you a better idea that it's not a house really, and yet it's exactly, you can reconstruct the whole house from it.
Right.
But it's still too much. It's not the same Indian anymore, but it's still, the whole shape is exactly the same like the original one.
Right.
In the third one, it's already mamish, you can't even reconstruct it from there unless you're the original guy and you know what it is.
Right.
And in the fourth one, it's not even that. So, the fourth one gives you the best Indian of that it's a total Nivdal. And really everything is there because in the final remez, the whole thing is really there, but it's not so clear like in the Mishnah and Gemara. And that's the reason why. Okay?
All right.
Okay, good. So
all right.
I'll be talking to you. I'm going to send you an email with that paper.
Yeah, okay. And check out the site. I put up the picture.
Yeah, I'll check.